As an attorney, you think, I'm immune from that. I can just walk in the house and separate the two. There was always someone who stayed away from therapy.
That was uncomfortable for me.
It's already hard enough to change a behavior. And then you add the criminal component.
How do you make that be the reason why you came through the door, but not the reason why you keep coming through the door?
Parallel between therapy and I think particularly a defense attorney.
We're the best secret keepers in the world.
Her expectations too high. Who goes to law school? Passes
Well,
the
that's
bar.
the first question.
Yeah.
Who would never do that?
Why?
Welcome to the Insights and Actions podcast. I'm Johnny Pierce. That's Matt Christian.
That's right.
And that's Craig James. And for those who are wondering who this fine gentleman is, Craig's going to let you know.
We have today another guest on the podcast. We've got Jeff Mangino, Senior Law Associate at DC on Biggs, drummer for Hall Pass.
Wow. Yes.
Bing, bing.
A guy we've all worked with and known for a while, and we want to thank Jeff for being here and
Welcome.
welcome.
Welcome
Thank
to the
you.
conversation.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
And it's great to meet the both of you.
All right.
So we've talked about why we all went into the profession of therapy. Mm-hmm. Why'd you go into law?
In high school, I took like a business law class kind of thing. And for some reason, I just enjoyed the topics, kind of the Judge Judy atmosphere of a court hearing kind of thing, dynamic. And I just felt like very comfortable with, like I could relate to it. And I talked to my parents about it, and I say, I'm taking this class, and, when am I becoming a lawyer? And they always just encouraged it. I was blessed. My dad was a nuclear engineer, coming from a traditional household. My mom was a homemaker. And I'll digress a little bit. I come from a mother who is, she recently just passed, unfortunately.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you. But she was an alcoholic and grew up in a very, in that environment, which was difficult. I'm seeing a therapist now, and after all these years of being 52, and there was always someone who stayed away from therapy, and they thought I could self-analyze, I could, talk to other people, and I could think it through on my own. And those dynamics, a great childhood, supportive childhood, two older brothers that were great, pretty good relationship with them. It wasn't just practicing law, it's the working with people. I wanted to do family law initially, at least that's what I kind of thought. And maybe that's from a little bit of the background I was raised in, because I thought I could share my experiences of substance abuse issues,
Oh, interesting, yeah.
family issues, the lack of ability to communicate in the family at times. And that's not something I realized then, but I realize it now. How to the benefit of effectively communicating with the family. And I thought my family was very close, just because you have a family and you're blessed that most people don't have brothers, sisters, or an intact family, we call it. But it doesn't mean you were necessarily that close in hindsight or able to communicate. And that took some time to understand. So I think I went into law with the notion of enjoying the concepts of the legal profession and the law itself. But for me, it was a goal to able to share, hopefully, my experiences to help advocate properly for the person. I think it's that ability, somewhat being, in my opinion, kind of like street smart, and able to not just focus on the legal aspects alone.
Yeah.
Family law.
You're right, which,
That's an intense one, I can
you do a couple of family custody cases, and it sounds good. And at the end, you're like, no, I need a break from that. Yeah.
Oof, I couldn't
It's
imagine.
draining.
I couldn't imagine, man, because people can get real ugly real fast in
Yes.
those kind of situations.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that was interesting to me is it seems like there's an interesting parallel between therapy and I think particularly a defense attorney, where we're both seeing people at times of high emotional distress in their life, and we're both behind this wall of confidentiality, which has its own type of dynamic to it. So I think it's interesting. And I'm actually interested, Jeff, what is it like for you trying to manage with people's personality, quirks, or maybe some mental health or substance use that they have going on when you're doing your job?
You have a situation where it's kind of a side component is that people charged with a crime, right or wrong, guilt or innocence, they are in a very stressful situation. They're on a difficult time of their life. They have the stress of just the charge itself and whether it's going to affect themselves, their family, the optics surrounding the situation of telling people about what's going on. Maybe they've been terminated from their job. Maybe it's going to impact their job at some point. And we're at a situation where if they have addiction issues, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or in a blend of possibly mental health, and then all of a sudden you have the criminal charge and they're expected just to kind of like stop that behavior. And I always
Just
thought
stop it.
just stop it. And I always thought it was kind of amazing in hindsight. And this is not something I learned from day one. It's just it's a constant learning experience from day one to now, and probably in the future. Is that it's just kind of fascinating to me that think you can just kind of stop that behavior because you're in a situation. And
When
I
the
think
odds are
it's
you're
a lot
probably
to
gonna
ask. That
increase
doesn't
it.
mean you keep using if that's your vice while this is going on. But it's just kind of makes me step back a little bit and evaluate the situation and say, if everything is perfect in your life, quote unquote, and everything's okay, it's hard enough to stop probably a vice or an addiction you have or a mental health issue you're going through or a depression episode, whatever's going on with your life, it's already hard enough to change a behavior that you believe is negatively impacting you.
Yeah.
And then you add the criminal component, right or wrong, and now we're just saying stop that behavior. It's like it's just a lot for that individual and for I think us as professionals to digest at one time.
Right. Yeah. What is it like for you all working with people that have some kind of legal thing? Maybe that's how they came in the first place. Maybe it's court ordered or not, or maybe they're pretrial. What is it like working with them compared to other clients?
I think it's two things. So depends on where you're at in the process. Like say you're doing an evaluation. If you can start the evaluation by letting the person know that the thing that's in their best interest is to tell you the truth of the matter. Because as an evaluator, it gives you the best opportunity to come up with a proper recommendation, if there is one, to properly document, if you need to create a letter that the lawyer will then get and then take into the courtroom. So just trying to establish that rapport enough to make it clear, like, look, I know that you may feel like it's counterproductive for you to say exactly whatever is going on, as far as if you're drinking 5 times a week versus 3 times, if you're having 7 drinks versus 2. I get that. But I promise you, it'll give me a better chance to advocate for you, to properly evaluate what's going on in your life if you give me those actual details. And given that we're using the measure in many cases, we use a SASE. It's a brief assessment that allows a person to both tell us directly about their recent use in terms of alcohol or drugs in the last, say, year. And also it has some true and false items on it. But, that part of it, the evaluation, it's really, can we bond enough that you see that I'm not necessarily against you? Like, I'm not a part of the legal system. I'm not going to say whether you're guilty or not. Like, that's not what I'm here for. Once the person's actually gotten into treatment and you're doing groups or you're doing individual therapy at that point, it's really trying to align in the sense of, now that you've got this consequence, how do you make this consequence benefit you? So if you've been mandated to come to therapy or come to group, how do you make that be the reason why you came through the door, but not the reason why you keep coming through the door? Make the treatment yours.
What about for you, Craig?
I think for me, I still, folks, look, I get to wear 2 hats. I get to evaluate you. Look, there's an incident that's happened. Let's talk about everything, as Johnny said. Give me it all. Let me make the determination what's important. But the 2 hats I wear are what's necessary for us to address your legal responsibility. And then there's probably going to be something that you as an individual need to look at. And let me help you determine how we're going to do this. It's a collaboration. That's the approach I've always taken. And, you helping me helps me help you and your attorney. And that's the approach I believe I'm not here, as Johnny said, I don't, guilt or innocence. It is what it's going to be, but let's figure it out. And I think what I have found is that the most amazing part is when a person comes and sees us for some legal matter, they get they get the treatment, they do the treatment, and then they stick around. Because they found value because it wasn't punitive. I'm not here to report to the court I'm here to report to you.
Yeah.
That's been my approach.
Yeah, and to Johnny's point, a lot of times that's why, like when doing the assessment or something, clients will kind of view us as an extension of the legal system. So
Yep.
it's, some kind of fear of they're going to tell us something, and then there's going to be a legal consequence for telling us something. And I know for myself, at first when I started doing some court ordered is fair, court ordered treatment, it was real uncomfortable for me at first. Like the idea that they don't have a choice to be there.
Yeah.
And that they don't want to be there, but they're still there. Not always they don't want to be there, but a
tends to
decent
be that
amount of
way,
the
yeah.
time. And I think so that was uncomfortable for me for a while. And I think something that's interesting with those clients versus ones that don't have a court piece is there's often less of an internal motivation to change because there's an outside thing pushing them, but there's stronger external motivations to change than in most situations, particularly when as part of the program, they need to have a time of sobriety and having the legal piece is usually enough to push their behavior some. And that can be an opening too when they have this period of sobriety and they see things change in their life and what it's like. So that's an interesting piece to me, at least, is again that the internal motivation is lower than average, but the external motivation is super, super high.
Yeah.
Given their situation. Yeah.
And I would say most jurisdictions, from my experience in Northern Virginia, the Commonwealth Attorney's offices are excellent to work with. They understand these cases very well, and that there's an addiction usually issue and a mental health component. And that's obviously changed throughout the years in a positive way. One thing I view as beneficial is humanizing the client. Mm-hmm. I think when a client comes to me on limited time for a consultation, again, DUI, it's, okay, go get an alcohol evaluation, right? Do you have a substance abuse issue? Do you need treatment? One,
what's wrong with you?
Right, right. Just like seeing a doctor. Do I need medication? I need treatment. What does that look like? How long is that going to take? Can I accomplish it? Do I have the time to do it? Can I make these sessions? What's the price component? The second component for me is really just that letter I get from you guys in particular is really powerful because the judges will read it. I will show that to the prosecutor if I want to. I don't have to. Depends what the information says. I sometimes don't like the evaluation, and for my client and advocating for them, even though treatment might be the best option, I have a job to do. Sometimes the client does not want to do it.
Yeah.
And I have to understand all those dynamics and present that evaluation if and when I want to at the appropriate time. And that being said, also humanizing again the client. So when the Commonwealth reads it, the judge reads it independently. There's just that background of who the person is very influential. I mean, we're all human. And at the end of the day, I think we have these barriers sometimes that, you have this judge who's just like I'm guilty of it too, think they're just almost like they have no life experiences. They're just they're like a robot. And that's just simply not the case. They all have their own issues. They're all normal people.
They might even have a family.
Family, kids, they can have bad days like all of us. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood with the client. I'm rushing through a consultation and I could I don't have the wherewithal to kind of hold the hand that day and hear their whole life story. Other times I do, and that's just like with the court system. It's busy. You have a busy docket, and some judge will read that letter. Some will say, just summarize, and sometimes they just said they're involved in treatment, and let's get a continuance for 90 days, and that's all it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to do a rich evaluation, it sounds like what we benefit from doing is not just focusing on the incident at hand or the history with substances, which we all have to do as a part of the evaluation, but taking the time to actually learn a little bit about where the person is from, what has the person gone through, maybe even start to make those connections between, hey, maybe this substance use is symptomatic, it's not the problematic thing. What may be problematic is the stress management or the absence of coping skills or something along those lines. So being able to weave that into the conversation, because that's often what's there. I think we talked about this in a number of podcasts, that typically substance use is not the end. It's something that's an offshoot of something. And if we focus on that exclusively, we get a person clean and sober and all that great stuff, that's super. Well, if they never learned how to deal with stress, if they never learned how to cope with things, then they'll just go off to another thing that they're turning to as a way of making things better.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is an interesting parallel is, again, particularly with someone who's working as a defense attorney, is I would imagine hear things at certain times that it might be hard to keep a non-judgmental stance. You might hear things where it's like,
Like, no.
and I think that can, that's something if we're honest with ourselves, we have to deal with some too. Like for Craig, for you, like, how do you manage that of maybe clients and they're saying something and maybe we've had some kind of similar, like it's kind of touching on something for us where it's like, oof, how do you manage keeping that kind of non-judgmental or maybe even like kind of compassionate stance towards them?
It's funny. I probably judge my family more than I judge my clients.
Right.
I do, because I know y'all.
I feel judged all the time by you,
Every
Craig.
chance. I listen. I have to. It's a responsibility. No, I think it's.
And I think we'd say we're probably nicer to sometimes these clients.
No doubt.
And patience and listening to their story
Most
than I
definitely.
give my
We are
closest
hired
friends.
to remember this.
No, that's true. Hopefully by
We're
the
not
hour.
hired to be in the family.
Hopefully you're on the hour, right?
We wake up in the family.
Yeah.
We're not
Financial
hired.
things going in the opposite direction, to be honest.
The gift that keeps on taking.
Why y'all bringing up stuff, man? No, I think it's a matter of my approach has always been why. Like we're all saying it. The behavior is behavior. What's the function of the behavior and why? And so, for me, at least in terms of answering your question, I get judgmental because I want to understand why. All of us had different life experiences, right? Like we've talked before. While my parents aren't married anymore, they're like really good friends. So I had that growing up, right? I experienced certain
Your
conflict.
parents are still really good friends, is what you mean.
Yeah. So actually, Johnny didn't even realize they weren't married.
I really
said
didn't.
podcast.
That was a podcast for real right there. I would have lost that trivia.
So it's a matter of we all have different childhood experiences, life experiences that make sense to us. If you can communicate it to somebody else and it makes sense to them and then they can help you understand your why, that's the focus I've always had. I don't have time to judge you and beat you up. Do it by yourself. You beat yourself up all day
And
long.
also, who am I? I mean, I went to school for a really long time, but I did not get a legal degree. We got a person on our team, Dr. Danielle Rothman. She's got a legal degree and a psychology degree.
She's overrated.
She's way too accomplished for us. That's why we never get to see her. She's
I
goes
would
for
tell
Christmas
you,
past.
look, overrated. She gets her expectations too high. Who goes to law school? Passes
Well,
the
that's
bar.
the first question. Right?
Yeah.
Who would never do that?
Why?
I don't know
Why?
why. Someone duped me.
And then you say, I don't want to do. I want to go psychologist. Like, what are you doing? She's over accomplished. But she's different breed. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, Danielle,
I'll
you're
say for
different breed.
myself.
Why did you go? Yeah.
Recently, I'm a counselor of law, so I always joke around with some people. I'm really a counselor too, and then I kind of keep that in mind because when we are meeting clients and meeting people, especially with these cases, you have to humanize yourself, understand what they're going through, and try to get to know them. That's how you obviously land clients too, is being personable. But yeah, it's just understanding that whole concept, and that I believe that I can offer counseling services and try to get in. And that's why I think we work well with each other, because at the end of the day, I do care about the clients. And it's a give and take between the clients. Some clients don't want to hear me going into their background and their story, and they just want, can you win this case or not? Others come in and want to talk about things, want to resolve it in a healthy way. And that's just a balance between everyone's kind of different in assessing that situation. Just like I suspect when people come in for treatment, some are here because they're court ordered and they have 8 or 10 sessions to do, and that's all they're here for. And maybe they'll engage, maybe they won't. And then you have the other people that I try to do if I'm in this situation where, well, I'm in it, so let's just take advantage of it.
Make the most of it.
We often say they're either court ordered. Well, they come for different reasons. Court ordered, spouse ordered. Those are a long time.
Right.
Wait, that's not the same thing?
It's never on their own. It's never on their own.
Situation. That's not the same thing.
I'm just asking.
I'm gonna leave that alone. 2 thoughts I had as we're talking. One, we're the best secret keepers in the world.
Gotta be.
Therapists and attorneys. Right? If you think about it, we have to keep secrets.
We know where all the bodies are buried. We do.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
But even the logic piece, right? I'm like, well, how does it work out for you? Like, I think that's the piece I like to do is challenge the notion that people have about who they are and what they can do. I don't know. It's
You want to expand people. You want to make them more.
I do, but I will say, and I've said this, I think I've said it here, but I know I've said it to clients, therapy sucks, man.
It does.
Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, I ain't lie to myself. Once I say it, it's now real.
It's a wrap.
You can't unknow what you now know. So I think that at times, we'll keep your secret, but now you know, I know you know. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So that's the piece for me.
And a similar thing with therapists. I mean, that's how I got into the thing. I've done plenty of therapy in my life for all kinds of different things. But I think as a therapist, at times could overestimate our ability to understand ourselves without having another person to relate to understand ourselves in that way, given what we do or certain training.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Oh, yeah. That's why it takes a therapist to talk to a therapist in some situations.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite things that I'll hear from a client from time to time as they're walking out of session is, I don't feel better. And they don't say it in like a malice way where they're like upset with me or anything like that. But you can see them kind of brooding a bit because we just unpacked something. We just unearthed something that may have been there the whole time, but it was so easy to just kind of get past it or go over it because it was unpleasant. And we finally wove our way there. And now that next week, a lot of work's going to get done because it can't unsee it. It can't stop thinking about it. And it's not a ruminating thing. It's not where it's like, okay, I'm punishing myself by thinking about it over and over again. I'm tired of this. I want it to be better. I want it to be different. And for every 5 sessions or so that we have of that sort, that's how we earn our money. That's how we make ourselves useful in people's lives. Because you just want somebody to come sit and talk with you and kick it and have a good time every time, and you walk out with laughs and giggles every single time. That's what friendship's for. I'm not your friend. I'm here to help you. And your friends help you in their own way, but we got to get to the ugly parts.
And that's a part sometimes where therapy can, I think, even be harmful because it'll act as a substitute for what's difficult in their life of maybe connecting with people, having relationships. It's like, okay, I can go to therapy and I'm getting some kind of need met that, rather than something that's going to translate into their life. I'm interested, though, Craig, given how you work and how you talk about things, to what we were talking about, that like, a client who's really intellectualized, like that's their defense. How do you work with that kind of client, and how do you you talk about a lot of times going beyond the behavior, looking at the emotion, given your kind of approach. How would you work with someone like that?
That's funny because I knew a clinician who was really believed in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And he was talking, and I said to him, what's the emotion? You trying to convert me? No, I'm just saying the emotion's driving the behavior. You're looking at behaviors. I don't care about behaviors. I'm looking at the emotion. Well, whether it's in therapy, coming to see an attorney because I got this case, I know it's there. I just don't want to deal with it. Now I have to. So if you intellectualize, that's okay. That's how you deal with it. That is your, if we break it down to left brain and right brain, you spend a lot of time in your logical brain. Well, are you in your logical brain because you don't understand emotion? Were you raised to believe emotions don't matter? Were you raised to believe compartmentalizing your feelings? Were you never taught? So we get to push and pull those pieces out.
The two-way street, just like with your clients. I have to have a good relationship with them. I have to know that they're going to be open to opening up about themselves, trusting me. I have to trust them. And I call it kind of like going on a date. You kind of know right away, in my opinion.
About this.
I kind of know right away within, it depends on my mood and how I present that day myself. I have a role to play in making that date go well. Sometimes I just don't want to go on the date, and you're going to see the result real quick. It's going to be like, well, here's the fee. And then that's the conversation. Other times when I think I have a good rapport with the client, I have a good connection, that's the client I want. That's the client I'm willing to work with on a payment plan or reduced fee, and especially when I know I have resources such as you guys here today, that I know I can put together this team. So I don't have to carry the burden all by myself, and we can, send out the workload on that.
It's us. Behind what you see us do professionally, this is what we're talking about, right? We do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? It's about the gut instinct. There's certain clients that
Correct.
call us and we're like, yeah,
That's not therapy.
that's not therapy, or I'm not, woo. We do turn down. I'd say 10 to 15% of calls that come in a week,
Yeah.
because you don't need. That's about right. What you're looking for is in therapeutic. So we do the same thing. Counselor.
Thank you.
It's just not the right fit, or I don't feel it.
Yeah, I that first date analogy, which I think resonates with me, it's you kind of can size one another up right away of what's going on. They're either going to want to share or they're not.
How long does it
And
take you to size them up?
I think it's from the initial meeting.
What about you? Sizing up a
I
client?
mean, I think
5 minutes into the phone conversation.
Yeah, it's me sitting down for 2 minutes. I just think it's a personality thing and a style thing, and again, I play a role in that.
Yeah.
Going back to the first date again, how I present myself.
Yeah.
Do I make it a really kind of a traditional attorney-client environment, or do I start off the conversation like, where are you from? What kind of work do you do? Tell me about yourself.
The human element.
And some people like that, some people don't, and that's just trial and error, give and take. But that's my style, that's my personality, and
I think
if I'm talking and they're just looking at me the whole time, and that doesn't mean they're a bad client. That's just part of the assessment.
But I think that's crucial right there. The fact that you can say that's my style, that I am not a robot. I am not pre-programmed to just take in whatever data you send my way and then kick something out like a machine. No, I have a way that I want to connect with people. I care about connecting with people. It helps me execute the task.
Yes.
The task is the task, whether it's you coming in for an evaluation, you getting treatment, you coming in and doing a consultation, whatever it might be, the task is the task. But if I cannot be myself in doing the task, I'm not going to do the task very well.
Correct. I'll go to bat for you if you go to bat for me. And it has to be a mutual relationship, or it's just something's going to fall apart at some point.
I think you're talking about is the four of us have been doing our professions for a long time. We pick up on stuff right away. Yeah. So a question we like to ask guests is, was there ever a particular experience that you had in life that was insightful, that you developed some insights from, and then you acted on it?
Right. Wow. Lot there. Probably give you numerous examples. But yes, for one, I think going through my divorce 10 years ago, involves so much, right? It involves a lot of reflection. At that point in time, I reached out to a therapist. I was always, I think maybe like most still, maybe it's a product of my generation or what have you, is still a little, you recoil when you think about therapy and having to come clean about yourself, which, I can play the game probably like anyone else and have conversations with anyone. I say, I'll go see a therapist and talk. And I did that with one therapist, and you get out of it what you put into it, right? And at some point, you got to step up the game and realize. And for me, that took time. I went through one therapist and just going through the motions, and I'm gonna get some information out of it. I always thought personally that I could kind of prided myself on the notion I felt I was very comfortable with, analyzing myself and being able to talk to people and somehow figuring it out by myself. And I've realized, and it took talking to various therapists, ones I connected with who were better at calling me out and not letting me get away with stuff, and be able to just be myself and say, put your faith into the therapist and learn from it, and really, take time after those sessions to think about it and then have conversations about it. So through the divorce, for me, again, it was about recognizing things that I had to improve about myself, You're dealing with, as father of two kids, how's that divorce and whatever that scarlet letter appears to be now still, and that stigma maybe that was still there when I would tell people, or a perceived stigma, and how my kids were handling that process. What role did I play in trying to protect them? How do I share my own thoughts? How do I make myself vulnerable? But I saw a therapist, and I called it goal setting. For me, saying I was going to see a therapist at the time was a little shaming. When I changed it to people, and I still use that term with clients, and for me, that helped me, is I would say, you're going to go see Craig James, you're going to go see someone, or I recommend this. And I would share my limited experience and say, I think therapy is a great thing. I said, for me, it was impactful. I use a therapist for goal setting, I would say. So I don't have to explain why. You want to, and if they ask, they ask me. I'm an open book. But at that initial client meetings, until I get to know each other and when I get retained, procedurally speaking, I said, I went to a therapist for goal setting through the divorce. And for me, that worked. It gave me structure of how to handle the situation. I was going through a little depression as well. So there's just a lot that I had to deal with. And I thought I could handle it all, but it was stressful.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I always thought I could also handle stress very well. As an attorney, you think, oh man, you must be stressed all the time because you got to handle the client aspect. You got to do a good job. They have certain expectations. And that's one aspect of it. And, how do you decompress when you get home? And I always thought, oh, I'm immune from that. I can just walk in the house and separate the two and flip the switch. And it took me years to understand that, me, my own self, I have my own baggage. And there is a lot of stress with what I do. And, that was the event for me, that it just involves so much reflection, stress, some depression, handling the family dynamics, handling the optics of it, handling the work environment with that going on. It's a lot to handle. Yeah. And I think I mentioned at the beginning, like, you have a situation where someone has a criminal charge and they're in a crisis. And whether they have a significant substance abuse or mental health issues or not is one aspect, but there's just a lot going on. And for them to get to that point, it's usually not a one-off.
No.
Yeah.
And it's a buildup of, there's just people I think would benefit from therapy. I know it's a big topic right now, especially these last couple of years, I think, from the court system themselves. There's mental health dockets, as you know. There's new statutes talk about diminished mental capacity, not so much defenses such as, mens rea of insanity. Of course, that's a classic, rare. But diminished capacity now is, are there some mental health issues that do not negate as a defense? But I use the term mitigation, that there's an explanation. I think that's often missed in the past. Client charged recently with like a DUI and had the kids in the car and evading the officer. And I sat him down at some point. I said, well, you got an alcohol problem. It's very high BAC and kind of just deer in the headlight kind of look. And I said, well, are you socially drinking? You have high tolerance? And it was kind of hard to engage, of kind of figure out what was going on. But, forced sobriety is, I think traditionally is all that you think you need to cure it. It's this event and the court telling you to stop drinking is important. They have to put he or she, whoever the judge is, has to put their name on the final order, and they send them back into society, and they have a role to play as a gatekeeper. I sometimes forget that because I'm in the trenches with the client looking for results that make me look good, make them coming back, do a good job for them, but also with the notion that the courts do not want to see these people back.
Yeah. Right.
We have plenty of cases. We have plenty of business. We have plenty of people charged. No one's concerned about the lack of business for that. It's about these judges and these prosecutors, whether or not, do not want to see these people back. We want success stories.
Yes.
And it's finally especially in Northern Virginia, most of these jurisdictions are allowing these mental health dockets, looking at mitigation evidence. But the people have to put the time and the effort in to do it, and they have to do it for themselves. And it's a win-win, I tell them. I said, this is going to help me negotiate your case. It may help you, but you ultimately have to do the treatment or whatever we think we recommend to do and take advantage of it. Whether it's forced or not, at the end of the day, you have to take advantage of this opportunity, or I welcome that you should. That's a win-win. If it can help with your case, great. I can't guarantee it.
Right.
But the byproduct is self-improvement and learning from it. Let's go for it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.